Hey everyone, welcome to this video where we start talking about CSS. It's time to jump out of the HTML and dive straight in. So with CSS, once we have our structure for our document, all of that HTML created, we can start working on our presentational layer. And having that correct HTML structure has been very important because it makes creating these styles so much easier. Cascading Style Sheets, or CSS, is the W3C standard for defining the presentation of documents written in HTML or any XML language. CSS is actually a separate language with all of its own syntax, and it helps to describe how the elements are going to be displayed on the screen. And with CSS, you can control the layout of a lot of different pages all at once with a single document. Typically, we store CSS documents in their own directory. We will store them inside of our Style Sheets directory for the remainder of this course. Now there's some really great benefits to using CSS because this provides us with precise type and layout controls. You can get print-like precision when you're using CSS, and there's even a set of properties that are aimed specifically at printing a page. Some more benefits to using CSS: there's a lot less work involved. You can change the appearance of an entire site by editing one style sheet. Code once and apply it multiple times, so it's reusable. With CSS, we have accessible sites. So when all matters of presentation are handled by the CSS, you can mark up your content meaningfully, all of that HTML, and make it more accessible for non-visual or for mobile devices. And another benefit, it's really reliable for browser support. So every browser currently supports CSS Level 2 and almost all of CSS Level 3. The only real disadvantage that we have is just a few lingering little headaches that are left over from browser inconsistencies from one browser to another, and we might cover that later down the road. But I'm looking at a website right now called CSS Zen Garden. It's an old site, but it still shows how some of the same HTML can be transformed into a multitude of ways just by altering the CSS. Now there's no image elements that are being used in any of the designs that I'm going to show you. It's 100% controlled by the CSS file. So a quick overview of what this site is. Essentially, you can download the HTML file, and anyone can take the bare HTML that's already been created and apply whatever CSS they would like to that HTML. Now the rules are you can't change the HTML. You can only change the presentational layer of the CSS. So I actually downloaded the HTML file and I added it into the VS Code editor. And I've also downloaded a couple of the CSS files to show you what this would look like. Now the design that we're looking at right now is called Tranquility, but I've also downloaded a couple of other ones. So if I were to look at this in the browser and I click on, let's say, Mid-Century Modern, then the look and feel is completely different, even though the HTML remains the same. Same thing if I were to pick, let's say, Screen Filler or a robot named Jimmy. Now this is truly the beauty of CSS design. Being able to have whatever creative control that you would like over your presentational layer while still giving out the same information to every end user. Okay, so let's take a look through the VS Code. I've got the Zen Garden file open, and this is just the index file. And then I downloaded a couple of the sample CSS files, and I've created 4 links to those files, and I have them commented out so I can show them to you one at a time. So that's these 4 links. I'll open up my index.html file in the preview pane. This is the raw HTML. The one that we were looking at earlier, if I were to uncomment this Verde Merdana, it looks just like the one that was out in the website, with some minor differences. This is a preview pane, so I do have some things that I'm going to lose. So if I scrolled this open, you'd see that all of those menus are still there. It's the same. Let's take a look at the next one. I'll comment this out. And we'll go to the Tranquil. Notice how it's completely different. I changed nothing in the HTML, I just added a different style sheet. And I can do this with all of these. For example, the Sakura doesn't quite look the same. I'm missing a few images in the CSS because I don't have access to the actual CSS images, but you can see that the complete layout and look and feel has changed. So with all of that, and knowing the power and the beauty and the design that's out there that we can make anything that we want to have happen in our CSS happen, now let's actually start trying to do it. To get started, I'm going to go out to Blackboard and download the Week 7 Demo Part 1 file, and I'll open that up in my VS Code. Now when it comes to having styles, there's 3 different ways that we can do it. There's what's called the embedded style sheet, the inline styles, and then there's an external style sheet. Let's start with the embedded style sheets first. We're going to create an embedded style sheet in our index.html file by adding a style element inside of our head element. But first, I'll collapse my Explorer window and I'll also open up my preview pane so you can see the changes happen in real time. Okay, just below the link element, I'll type in a style element. And I want to create a rule that converts our H1 element into red text. Now we're going to cover the syntax a lot more in detail later, but for now, just type along with me. Now I'm targeting the H1 element. That's called a selector. I'll type in H1, a space, an opening curly bracket, which will insert automatically the closing curly bracket, and then I'm going to put in that I want to change the color to red. So I'll type color::red. And notice how our H1 changed immediately to red? That's pretty cool. And embedded style sheets do work, but we're going to try to avoid them for a few reasons. One is they only style what's on the current page. If I wanted to change all of the H1 elements on my website, let's say I had 10 web pages, well, I'd have to duplicate that on every single page. It would be pretty hard for me to manage this if I had a site that had hundreds of pages. If I had styles that were repeated on every single page, then changing those styles down the road would become tedious. Imagine going into 100 different files to change the color of your H1. We want to avoid having our HTML and our CSS in the same document. We want to keep those things separate. Separating our code keeps our work clean, maintainable, and very easy to manage moving forward. So I mentioned there's also something called an inline style. Well, we can make these styles inside of our actual tag by using what's called the style attribute. Inline styles, though, have the same pitfalls as the embedded style sheets, and we're going to try to avoid them. I'll circle back to that in just a moment. But right inside of our H1 that we just made red, let's add a style attribute. And we're going to change the color to blue. Notice that the H1 element changed from red to blue? We'll cover this more, but what do you think that might tell you about how inline styles and embedded styles work? Sometimes developers will use embedded or inline styles to add a style for debugging or testing purposes, and it's good to know that these exist, but they're not allowed in our class. We're going to do this a better way. Let's go ahead and delete out those embedded and inline styles. We don't need those anymore. Now before we go to external style sheets, I mentioned circling back around, talking about some of those same pitfalls that are out there for embedded and inline styles. And that's because let's say we wanted to change all of our paragraphs so that we used a different, let's say a different font family. I would have to add in style, font family, and let's say I tried this impact. I have to now copy and paste or rewrite that for every single paragraph that I want to apply that style to. Every keystroke that we introduce is just another opportunity for us to make a mistake. It would also be really hard to maintain this. If you wanted to change that font family in the future, you have to search through every single paragraph, maybe not just on this particular HTML file, but on all of the files in your website, just to find where that was being used. So again, we're going to do this a better way. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that one also. And I'm going to create an external style sheet. That's a separate document that's going to hold all of our styles. I'll open up that Explorer window. Because all this time we've been creating style sheets directories in our websites, well now we get to actually use it. So I'm going to go up to my style sheets folder and I'm going to create a new file and I'll name it main.css. We have to add a comment, our name and our date. Just like in all of our HTML files, we need to start with that comment, and comments look a little bit different in CSS than they do in HTML. They start with a / and an asterisk, and they end with an asterisk and a /. And then you could just type in the middle what you want your comment to be. But knowing how much we love shortcuts in this class, we're going to do it with our shortcut. So I'll type in my name and today's date. I'll select both, and then I'm going to use that shortcut for Command /. If you're on a window, that's Control /, and I'll let the editor add it as a comment for me. This is also very helpful when it comes time to debug our code because we can rapidly include and exclude code using comments to sort of turn it off temporarily while we check on things. I do like to have my comments formatted, so that's why I have it changed in the way that I have it now. I'll remove that first comment. We don't need that anymore. All right, let's get back to that H1. This time, we're going to have it so that our H1 is green. I'll create my H1, that's the selector, my curly brackets, the color, green. And every declaration that we create in CSS has to end with a semicolon. That's an absolute must. So I'll put that in there, and now I have that written out. And I want to point out that when there's only one style rule, we need to save space by condensing it into one line. You might be tempted to break these out into 3 lines like this, but I want to caution against doing that because just like with HTML, you want to keep your code clean and tight because this helps to improve the readability. Imagine, if you will, a style sheet that has 300 lines of code, and maybe half of those are a single declaration. That's 3 times as many lines of code to scroll through than if you just wrote it on one line. So always make sure that if you have one declaration, you're keeping it on one line. Okay, now if you saved and you refreshed and you noticed nothing has changed, our level 1 heading is not green, well, that's because we don't have a connection yet between our main.css file and our index.html file. We need to make that bridge connection happen in order for these 2 documents to talk to each other. So inside of our index.html file, we're going to go up into the head element because this is where all of our metadata is stored, and we're going to create a link that connects our HTML file and our CSS. We'll create the link element, and that's going to take 2 attributes. We need the relationship or Rel attribute. This is what's going to define the link document as a style sheet document. So the relationship in this case is style sheet. The second attribute is the Href attribute. Now we've seen this one before because we use this in other ways. This is what tells the HTML document where to go and look for that CSS style sheet, and we're going to use a relative path to get there relative to our current location. We're currently on the index.html file, so in order for us to get to the style sheets, we need to go to the style sheets directory first. So I'll type in style sheets. I'll put in my / to allow me to have access to inside of that style sheet, and there you can see I now can see or have access to the main.css file. Now that I've saved that change, you can see that our H1 is now the color green. But notice in our directory, we actually have another HTML file out there. So we have this index.html, but we also have peanutbuttervariations.html. If I click on this one, I can see that this file also has an H1 for peanut butter variations. Well, what if I want to have that H1 mirror or mimic the H1 on my index file? Notice when I scroll down and select the link, my H1 is black. I want to have that change to green, or at least pick up the same styles that were in my style sheet. In order to do that, I just need to add that link into the head here to make the connection between this HTML file and the CSS. So just like before, I'll create my link element. The relationship is style sheet, and the actual href is the same as before. I need to get into the style sheets directory to find that main.css. And now you can see whatever changes that I make in my CSS, it can apply to both of those pages at the same time. That's pretty cool. Alright, that's all I have for this video, but if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.